All right, all right. Hello, all you sports fans out there in podcast land, and welcome once again to another edition of Babbling Brooks, your new favorite podcast, where I, your host Brooks, try to bring you some of today's sports news with just a little twist of my point of view. Happy hump day, everybody out there. Hope you're having a wonderful week so far. It's actually my Saturday, so I'm taking it easy today. Like, sort of slept in, not really. But hey, it's nice to not have to do anything. Try to do a little bit around the house. Had to do some laundry. Eventually, y'all know how that is. But for the most part, going to be lazy. Hey, it's okay to do that sometimes. I'll get outside at some point because it looks kind of pretty outside. Maybe that's what I'll do after this. Sorry if I'm a little, sound a little sinusy, nasally, whatever. I'm fighting off I think it's a combination of allergies and the cold. Just this weather lately, how it is, like fall going into winter. Kind of be cold, it warms up, be in the 60s, and it cools back down. So kind of adjusting to that. It's the time of year everybody keeps getting sick because you can't really help it. And so just a quick little episode. There's been a couple times I've meant to get on here and do an episode. Maybe meant to come in and talk about the Bucks. Game the Hawks almost, looked at times like they could win before the Bucks ran away and won that one. But didn't do that. Just it's tough sometimes for me on like Friday, Saturday can be very hectic, busy days at my job. So when I get off work, it can be very challenging for me to motivate myself to sit here and talk into my laptop for 20, 30 minutes or more. Tough sometimes, I'm trying to work on it. But every now and then, especially you get one listen a week, you're like, what the hell am I doing this for? But I'm going to keep trying to do it. I promise you that. And so today, mostly going to we'll go into the Panthers a little bit, some about the Braves, not a lot about the Hawks. We'll save that for tomorrow as they are back in action at home tonight. The Nets are in town. And another time I meant to do an episode was Sunday. I came home, actually got to watch the second half of the Panthers game. So I'm like, hey, and as I'm watching this, I'm like, man, we might actually win this shit. Bryce Young with the nice moves, nice little spin move to get into the end zone for a 2-point conversion that made it a 21-18 game. Defense getting the ball back to the offense, so hopes are up. Like, man, he's looking good. And then all of a sudden, boom, back to where we were. Not pick six, but interception, pretty much ending the game. That was it. That was all she wrote. But offense was some slight improvement. I mean, the running game actually worked. Raheem Blackshear got one rush. So I'd like to see him get opportunity. He's got one rush for 6 yards. But Chuba Hubbard, how about the first 100-yard game for a Carolina rusher this season? Of course, the first for him. Miles Sanders ain't been close. He had 8 carries for 23 yards. But Chuba Hubbard, 25 carries for 104 yards. You do the math, that's 4.2 yards per carry. Not too shabby. Not like the best in the world, but just showing, hey, the offense is going to slightly improve if you do this. And this could help Thomas Brown out. I'm not against a scenario where you have Thomas Brown return as the offensive coordinator. Unlike Frank Reich and Josh McCown, I think Thomas Brown really means it when he says he likes Bryce Young. There's still work to be done, but I think it goes a long way if you have a coordinator, a play caller that actually wants to have the quarterback that he is calling plays for. Frank Reich, Josh McCown, obviously it feels like at this point they wanted C.J. Stroud. That was their preferred option. I hate that my nose is already running. I hate when that happens, especially when I'm trying to talk. See how long till the snot just keeps falling. So, there are some good things to come out of this, even though it was a loss. And with that loss to the Buccaneers in Tampa on Sunday, the Panthers are officially eliminated from postseason contention. Because on top of them losing, the Falcons actually beat the Jets. That crushes the Panthers' hopes to go to the playoffs this year. Which means a lot of people are saying Bryce Young should maybe get set down. You don't want to injure him or his confidence any more than it's already been injured. I don't know about all that. I feel like he needs to, at this point, maybe now, if it's too late too late to really think it now, but now even it does feel like at this point, with the season all but officially over for the Panthers, that maybe they shouldn't have started Bryce Young right away. It seemed like the obvious thing to do, and there were times I was questioning it, but I was like, yeah, I mean, when you give up that much to move up to take a guy at number one, you expect him to start week one. But Bryce Young, I always kind of felt from the beginning of the whole process, not that he wasn't day one ready, because I wasn't for sure about that. I was like, well, he is coming out of the SEC. That gave me some confidence that he could figure it out. But C.J. Stroud, to me, was the most game one, day one player ready to go. And it's shown. Look at the season he's had. He's not only like the for sure you would think offensive rookie of the year, but damn, he's getting his name mentioned in the MVP conversation as a rookie quarterback with a rookie coach, DeMarco Durines, who was also interviewed by this Carolina Panthers team before they hired Frank Reich. Panthers still getting criticized for firing Frank Reich, but I'm okay with that because the team was getting worse. The offense was getting worse. I didn't think it was that great of a hire to begin with. I like the staff he put together, but that in itself still didn't work out. Too many people, and it was still the fact that Thomas Brown was calling plays. Those 2 games he called plays, it was Frank Reich's offense still. So it wasn't like Thomas Brown was designing his own offense. But, I mean, that's two coaching hires that David Tepper has messed up. So he's really got to get it right this time. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But it definitely does feel like it would have been beneficial for Bryce Young to start the season. We brought in Andy Dalton because he's capable of starting games. He did a good job the one game he started when Bryce was, more some precaution when Bryce was hurt early on. But it just, especially, they always say hindsight is 20/20. It's really easy to say this now. But it feels like something they should have been able to tell. And maybe it was just the mandate was he starts, period. But it feels like it might have been good for Bryce Young. It definitely probably would have been good for this team. If you start Andy Dalton the first 3 or 4 games. You let Bryce Young keep putting work in. Let him keep learning. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he learned behind Alex Smith for a season. Steve Young learned behind Joe Montana. This happens. Not everybody's going to go out there right away. And, you could use, what I mentioned before, you'd be like, oh, but you gave up so much to move up to get Bryce Young with that number 1 pick. But doesn't that make it even more of a reason? Isn't that even more of a reason to take it slow and make sure you get it right? It would seem to be the case. And like I said, very easy to say this now. So you bring in Andy Dalton for a reason, because he is not only going to be able to sort of coach the kid up, talk him up, teach him things, but he can show him things. Let him start a few games so he can see what it looks like in the NFL. Because the NFL is different than college. Yeah, the SEC, where Alabama plays, is the best conference in college football. It is the conference in college football that at least partially is going to resemble the NFL a little bit. You've got big guys. You've got fast guys. But the speed overall is not the same. Because the NFL don't just have the best players from the SEC. They got the best players from every conference. Every team that plays college football feeding them to the NFL. So it's the best of the best of the best. Sorry, I had to stop to wipe my nose. But it just feels, they should have given the kid time. There were questions. I still feel like the biggest failure is just building a team around him. You're Scott Fitterer. I don't know how Scott Fitterer has not been fired as the general manager yet. He should have been fired with Frank Reich. Because I think he's even more responsible for how bad this team is. Because he didn't really shore things up. The only running back he brought in was Miles Sanders after letting Foreman leave. Could have got some other options. Overpaid Miles Sanders, and it's been disappointing so far. To his defense, he has started the season dealing with injuries. So that happens. And you can't help how the game is called to a certain degree as well. You can do better with your touches, but you can't control how it's all called necessarily, especially with it, when you're kind of new. But on top of that, Scott Fitterer didn't spend any real money on the offensive line. just counted on last year's team just building on their success. And I get it to a certain degree, but when you're like giving all this up to, take the quarterback of the future, and there are questions about his size and durability, shore up that line, stack it up. But you're going to deal with injuries on a unit like that. It's unavoidable in the game of football. They're in the trenches of the NFL right there. So bring in some more dudes. Bring in more weapons. Yeah, Adam Thielen is great. And he's, been an incredible receiver for the Panthers in comparison to the rest of them that they got. But after losing DJ Moore, you need to bring somebody, bring in somebody more explosive. And it was encouraging to see DJ Chark have a few yards. It was even more encouraging. How about Jonathan Mingo? The most targets in 10, most receptions, 6, and the most yards of his NFL career. 69 yards, which isn't a lot. You like to see him break 100 for the years out. But it's something. It's an improvement. Sometimes incremental, but that is back-to-back games where he's had at least 60 yards. Did it on less targets the previous game, obviously, with 60 yards. So, him and Bryce Young building that chemistry is a reason why I don't believe Bryce Young should be sitting out right now. Yeah, you don't want to damage his confidence, self-esteem, whatever. But damn, if you take him out now, after he ain't really had any success, how is that going to be? That's what he's got to sit on and dwell on. I think maybe by the end of the season, that's something you think about, like the last 1 or 2 weeks. But now you got to see you got to give him a chance to learn. I mean, you've already sent him out there and dealt with all this shit. Like, you don't want to take him out and bench him unless he's had some success to sort of like focus on a little bit. And hopefully we can see that next week. I'm not counting on it necessarily. Going down to New Orleans, we weren't able to beat the Saints in Charlotte earlier in the year. But it usually seems like this team, right about the time I give up on them, they start winning. So maybe that's what will happen, because I'm at a point, I'm not giving up like forever. I'm still a Carolina Panthers fan. Maybe not as passionate as at times, because it just, I don't know, man. I was just watching a video, and it's like, go back, letting Thomas Davis leave, letting Greg Olsen leave and go to Seattle at the end of his career. Those are 2 huge leaders on each side of the ball. Then Matt Rule comes in, lies about being excited to work with. I'm excited to work with Cam Newton. Bullshit. Matt Rule was a terrible hire. Matt Rule was an even worse hire than Frank Reich. Because he didn't even really look that hard. He's just like, I love this guy. Let me give him way too much money so the Giants don't get him. Man, I wish the Giants would have got him. Keep him. It was a waste of time for the Panthers. So then they cut Cam Newton for nothing. And then Luke Kuechly retires, which of course was mostly health related, but you can't help but wonder if part of it was he didn't think he was going to work out well, maybe some with Matt Rule and his system, maybe even David Tepper. Like, man, this guy don't know what the fuck he's talking about, taking over this team. And yeah. And that will bring me to what I think that, we should do head coach wise. I really, especially if he wins a national championship with Michigan over the next month or couple months, I like that. I like bringing in Jim Harbaugh. I think that is not a bad option at all. Can be like an acquired taste, is what a lot of people say about Jim Harbaugh. It would keep the trend of bringing back a former Panthers quarterback. Never actually played, but he did dress for 6 games with the Panthers at the very, very end of his playing career in 2001. But I don't know, man. The way that his team fights for Harbaugh, the way that Harbaugh has, stood up for players' rights. Of course, he was one of the main coaches that was front and center in George Floyd protests. And you could tell his players and his staff, are passionate, that they want to go fight for this guy, which is something you need in the NFL. So we had last year when Steve Wilkes took over as the interim coach for the Panthers. But David Tepper wanted an offensive-minded coach. And how's that working out? It didn't, did it? So, yeah, we should have hired Steve Wilkes. So that's my my top 3 in no official order, who the Panthers should hire as their next head coach. Jim Harbaugh, number 1. Steve Wilkes, number 2. I really think that, they should try to undo the wrong. The problem with this option and why it probably won't happen, David Tepper would have to admit he was wrong by not hiring Steve Wilks last year, which I don't see that kind of humility coming from David Tepper. Not the David Tepper that we have seen so far as fans of the Panthers. I think it would be a great move, but I don't see it happen. And we do have, defensive coordinator now who's done a good job. But I don't know if he's as I don't know yet. I don't know what, but I wouldn't mind an Airjo either. Or a Virjo. I can't stand this cold. But the other option, I think, which, there was some regression in the last game. Sam Howell's numbers weren't quite as good. But Eric Bieniemy, it was an option. He was one of the few guys interviewed back when the Panthers hired Matt Rule. I would like to see the alternate universe. We'll see what the team's doing. And I think it was an alternate universe where Eric Bieniemy was hired by David Tepper. And I'd like to see what's happening in that universe because I think it could have been okay. I feel like he would have been more likely to keep Cam Newton. It's easy to forget now, but Cam Newton was on the verge, it felt like, of a career resurgence. Of course, dealt with injuries 2018, 2019. And then they just kind of gave up on him because, Matt Rule, Joe Brady, I guess, they wanted Teddy Bridgewater. Steady Teddy. And they overpaid Steady Teddy instead of letting Cam Newton kind of do his thing. They gave away Cam Newton, the best player in franchise history, for nothing. And he was on his way to what people were calling a potential another MVP season before TJ Watt wrecked his shoulder. And that probably would have been called a penalty if it happened to Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or one of the faces of the league. But it was Cam Newton. And they literally would go years and years, multiple seasons in between, calling rougher the passer penalties that would benefit Cam Newton because he's a runner and he's a big guy. You can take it. I'm still pissed about that because I think that affected his whole career. And it was a big part of shortening it. And the fact that for some reason nobody just wants to give him a chance. It doesn't make any sense to me. So those are my top three options. Harbaugh, Wilks, and Bieniemy. I said the current defensive coordinator I wouldn't mind. Jim Caldwell, depending on how things go the rest of the way, I think is worthy of consideration. And Thomas Brown, you need to see more from him before you consider him. But I wouldn't mind seeing what he does as an offensive coordinator calling a different sort of offense. Because it wasn't a great game, but it was an improvement. And you got a 100-yard rusher for the first time all year. So we'll see what the Panthers do with the rest of the year. It's kind of a strange time because none of the games really matter for this year anymore. It's about next year. What are they going to do about Brian Burns? Hadn't been able to work out a deal with him. His season hasn't been what he was hoping it would be, obviously, and what I thought it would be. But a lot of that is nobody. You don't have letting Hassan Reddick leave a couple years ago to go to the Eagles. Really missing that other guy, bringing the pressure on the other side. They haven't been able to find someone who can consistently do that. And Brian Burns too. You can tell he getting thrown out of that last game for throwing a sort of punch. The Bucs offensive lineman. And it's been a frustrating season for him because, number one, I thought he'd get the money locked in. The Panthers felt like they wanted to do it, but apparently they didn't. Weren't able to reach a deal with Burns and his team. And Burns would, of course, love to be playing better himself, but even if he was, it's not like he single-handedly, as a defensive player, can make our season that much better. I mean, forcing some turnovers would help. But shit, from the looks of this offense, that might not help that much. But we'll see, man. I still hope we can win some games and show some kind of promise, show some kind of fight. Because it feels like you can barely recognize this organization since Tepper took over. And obviously, Richardson had to go. The sexism, the accusation, the racism. You couldn't keep him around. Obviously, he needed to sell the team. But, man, Tepper just... I don't know. It feels like I wish we could have got somebody else because Tepper is just first you're like, maybe his aggressiveness, having the big old balls on his table, brass balls. Well, maybe this energy will be good, but it's not, man. It's just seems to be wanting to just prove he can do it. It's man, you need to let some other people make these football decisions. Your years with the Steelers as a minority owner have not helped you apparently because shit's been wild. Yeah, all the guys that have left, and not all of it's his fault. but some of it is. So we'll see what happens, though. Maybe next year, Bryce Young, I still believe, can really be a special quarterback in the NFL, but he wasn't ready. He was not ready to be starting this year. And like I said, yeah, hindsight's 2020, but yeah, he probably should have started the game, especially when you have someone like Andy Dalton, who's not, obviously not the prime of his career, but he ain't done by any stretch of the imagination. But we've already talked about that. Let's talk about some good news. The Braves, still no word on who they're going to put in there to replace Ron Washington, Eric Young Sr. They're going to be very key hires. Also losing their bullpen coach to become the pitching coach of the Orioles, Brian Snickers. He's like, I'll still be good, though. So you got to appreciate Brian Snickers. I'll be fine. But obviously, there's going to be some losses that are felt by this team. Not any major losses from the players really wide so far. Worried about losing Max Fried next year in free agency, but we got him for one more year. I'd love to see them work some kind of extension out with Max, so you just get a little confidence there. They're still trying to get a pitcher. There's been rumors Dylan Cease potentially getting traded somewhere, and we're one of the teams in the running for that. Of course, the big trade, not big trade, we did do a trade for Jared Kelenic, and he's like, number one pick, had a lot of, shown a lot of potential, but kind of just been like flashes in the pan and hasn't really been able to reach that full potential just yet with the Mariners organization, But maybe change of scenery sometimes for guys like these can be good. I mean, look what Matt Olson, already a good player, seemed to get even better coming to Atlanta. How about you could say the same for his former teammate in Oakland coming over, Sean Murphy. I about forgot his name. And, looking a lot better after coming to Atlanta. So could you see a similar effect? As the plan as of now is he's going to be in a platoon type situation. Him and Vaughn Grissom. That's right, Vaughn Grissom. We've said it for a while. Should be, somebody to consider in left field. And seems like a good option. He really hits the ball well. Left field I think can be learned. He's played infield positions, but second base and shortstop backed up right now. And you don't want to get rid of him, he's someone that could be a good part of this team. You've had, even Chipper and Austin, they both started their career playing some games in left field. But some guys end up settling in there, and I think it's something he can learn. He's going to be playing in Puerto Rican Winter Ball. Vaughn Grissom will be playing left field for the first time. So get a feel for the field. I think it's something he'll be able to do. And he could even get some work in at DH. Doesn't seem like Azuna's going anywhere. Going to have him for at least one more year. And hopefully we can see more of May and June Marcel. Before that, and then July was bad. April was terrible. But he had some good months in there. Hit a lot of homers. And, they'd come in between. But he was more consistent than he's been if you count out the terrible months in a while. So that's, the news there pretty much. And, of course, Shohei Ohtani. I've seen some reporters, like on ESPN, they were complaining about how he was being secretive. I'm like, dude, that's his business. Like, he's not, it felt more like I was reading the article, and I'm like, man, it feels like more like Buster's, just pissed. He's upset at Shohei for not including him. I'm like, man, what? He doesn't have to talk to nobody. He doesn't have to tell you the name of his damn dog. I mean, is it kind of weird? Maybe silly? Yeah, a little bit. But everybody's different. You don't have to play the same game. Excuse me. We'll see that. I'm really just hoping Shohei, I know he's met with the Dodgers, the Blue Jays. Some other teams were mentioned. Of course, the Angels are still trying to stay in the running there. He does have a connection there. At one point, the Braves were mentioned. And I read an interesting article saying how, there's all these reasons it wouldn't make sense for Shohei just because the Braves would be paying Shohei the same amount of money or more money than Austin, Ozzie, and somebody else. I can't remember the other player combined. The three of their, stars combined would make less than Shohei on his own in, annual average value on contract. He's going to get, the biggest contract in Major League history. And he's not even going to pitch this year. If he's going to pitch this year, I can see the Braves being more likely to do it because it could solve two needs. But that makes it unlikely. It's just not Alex Anthopoulos' style for what he's shown us so far, at least. And then you're not even for sure that he's going to be the same pitcher when he starts pitching again next year. He'll be just hitting next year, and then after that, supposed to make a return to pitching. But can you really guarantee after the second kind of major surgery, at least, that he'll be the same or comparable at least? But one reason to look out that the Braves could end up doing it, and this was an interesting take, but it makes sense when you think about it, stock price. Because, yeah, you'd be going into some luxury tax situations. We're already over the tax line. We'd go into a different tier, signing Shohei. But if that's the kind of move. The Braves are one of the few publicly traded teams. I think the only one right now, since Liberty Media spun them off. Like Shohei, could really drive that stock price up. And that could help pay for some of that luxury tax. Make it matter maybe a little bit less. Make it sting not as much. So I'm curious. I'm excited to see what this Braves team do. It was a disappointing end of last year. But, we weren't that far off. It's just about making the right hires to replace Ron Washington, Eric Young Sr., and the bullpen coach whose name I do not remember. But not that that's not important, but I just think where Ron Washington was just so much front and center with this team and the day-to-day stuff that he was a part of and the major part that he was of the culture of this team. Talking about culture being important, that's, I feel like, one of the main things with Carolina that's wrong. The Panthers in football. When you let Thomas Davis leave one year, Greg Olson leave the next year, then you got Luke Kuechly retires. You bring in a guy full of empty words and Matt Rule that doesn't understand what's going on in the modern game, it feels like at times. And just likes to hear himself talk. Sounds like a shitty youth pastor. Then you bring in Mr. No Excitement Frank Reich. No offense to him, but just you need someone more inspiring, especially after you pass on Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes really could have established some culture. Could have got these guys, playing for something. That's what I like about Harbaugh. I think Harbaugh can do that. He's got a good record in the NFL. He's tough to work with at times. But maybe that's what they need. So that's definitely an option I wouldn't mind. There's still a lot of, Ben Johnson's still the top option, betting-wise, it seems like. But so the Braves, with the culture, you don't want to have the same problem you got in Carolina. We didn't really have a specific owner now. Shit, I'm an owner. I bought slightly over a share of Braves stock earlier this morning. Well, just in case. It's not going to go down. Shit. It will go up. Like $35 a share right now. But we'll just have to see what happens, man. The Hawks in action tonight. Hopefully, I'm assuming AJ Griffin's just done at this point. Shit. Not even playing him against his dad's team. But it's not important as winning. But still, I feel like AJ has some contributions to make to this team. My biggest complaint about Quinn Snyder so far as a coach. So I'd love to see AJ Griffin getting some work. Still early in the year. Still seeming like a mid kind of year. The Hawks are back to 500. But I'll take that over what my Panthers are doing. One win all damn season. So, Panthers would be killing to be 500 right now. Not literally, but, it'd be nice. It'd be a better feeling. That's going to be it. I feel like a bunch more sneezes coming, so I'm going to end this episode before that happens. But, hey, hope y'all have a great day. Check in tomorrow. I'm going to do an episode in the morning talking about tonight's Hawks game against the Nets. Hope y'all have a wonderful Wednesday. If you enjoy the sunshine, it ain't too cold out there. And check back in, subscribe on Spotify so you don't miss a babble. Come back for more of your new favorite podcast. This is Babbling Brooks, signing off. Peace out.